Guy Chennels, who's the Chief Commercial Officer at Discovery Corporate and Employee Benefits, discusses the upcoming September release of the new two-pot retirement system, which will allow users to access the savings pot component of their retirement savings. We speak to him this evening as he joins us. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us on the show. Perhaps let's start off with some basis on some of the line of thought, the reasons behind the necessity of the two-pot retirement system.
Thanks. It's good to be with you this evening, Paul. The two-pot system is a response from originated with Treasury to respond to a challenge that South Africa has, and in fact two challenges that pull in opposite directions. The one challenge is people don't get to retirement with enough. In general, South Africans don't get to enough. They have enough when they get to retirement. They end up needing to rely on the state or rely on their families or both. And that is a problem for many reasons, including their inability to create generational wealth, the inability for people to live in dignity in retirement. That is then counterbalanced by another problem, which was reflected in your headline news, that people find it hard to make ends meet. It is difficult, has been difficult for a long time, and in fact in recent times has become more and more difficult for people to make the paycheck that they get last. And so what you find is that people find it difficult to trade off between the kind of needs of today and the needs of tomorrow. And that especially happens when people face some sort of financial crisis. They lose their job, or they have a medical emergency, or debt gets out of hand for them. And so what you find in South Africa very often is that people will resign from their employment in order to access their retirement savings. That is currently allowed. You can access your retirement savings if you resign from your employer in order to meet pressing financial needs. And what government's trying to do with two-pot is to try and get a balance between those two things. The way they plan to do that is to create some access, emergency access to your retirement savings that's available even if you don't retire from your employer, and to make that available on an ongoing basis. So at the point that you get into real crisis, you're able to use your retirement savings to take some of the pressure off. But in exchange for that, what will happen in the future is that a big chunk of your contributions, 2/3 of your contributions, will be locked away until retirement to make sure that there is something available for you at retirement to provide for a decent life in retirement.
As you say that, what kind of considerations do you think one needs to make? I mean, emphasizing that we are indeed in difficult times, that people are finding it hard to make ends meet, but there has to be some sort of reasoning behind withdrawing these funds.
Absolutely, and we've heard I've personally heard a number of anecdotes of people, and many others have heard people talking about two-pot casually, and very often the line of reasoning is that money is becoming available, or it will even just be simply paid out, as if it's some kind of tax rebate or something, which is not the case at all. The money that's in your retirement savings is for you, for your retirement, and what's becoming available from sort of the middle of September or so is that some of that money would be available to you if you really need it in an emergency. And that's what I would ask South Africans to be responsible around, is to consider whether they really do need it. The other kind of misconception that has the potential to really lead people astray just at the moment is that when people hear that there's change, they become concerned. And I've heard many stories of people who are resigning from their employers now in order to access their retirement savings, or even pretending to get divorced so that they can access some of their retirement savings, because they're under the impression that those savings won't be available after September. That is actually a misconception. It's important for South Africans to know that any money you have in your retirement savings at the end of August will still be available to you if you were to leave your employer and want to take it out in cash after September, or if you were to get divorced. So the rules that apply to your, let's call it old money, the money that you built up till now, is not being challenged at all. And we're just starting a new regime. That's what's happening from September.
I'm glad that you cleared that misconception on the retirement savings, because it's about a week or so to the implementation of the system kicking in. And we know that members of retirement funds still have more questions than answers. And South Africans have been warned against dipping into retirement funds because of, tax will also be a consideration, that if you want to take 30,000 Rand out, 30,000 Rand withdrawal may not be what ends up as 30,000 Rand in your actual account.
That's a very good point. In fact, it may even be worse than that. I'll explain why. But firstly, just to say, to get a handle on what the money that you take out would actually be worth. I think there are one or two places you can go. I know Discovery has a nice website available to the general public. On Discovery's general website, you can go and find a two-part page. And what that does, that's very important for people, is it allows you to say, all right, I plan on taking, to use your example, 30,000 in September. If my marginal tax rate is 20%, what will that actually be worth? What money will I actually get out? And it'll tell you that. It'll also tell you one other thing, which speaks to your earlier question, and it's very important. What does it mean for me? What's the trade-off, actually? So if I take that money now in cash, that is helpful for whatever I plan to spend it on. But what does it mean in terms of my long-term retirement? So our calculator, for example, tells you what it might be worth at retirement. That 30,000, what's that actually worth in retirement? So what are you giving up? And another way to make that easy to understand is, how much longer would I have to work to make up for that savings that I'm planning on using now for whatever good purpose I need to use it for?
In thinking about long-term retirement, how significant would one's age be? If you're 30 years old, you've still got another 30 years to keep working. Is that something to consider? Perhaps thinking you need about however much now, it would be worthwhile to withdraw it. I mean, you've still got time anyway. Is that a reasonable chain of thought?
Yeah, actually what often happens is that people think of the amount that they've saved up to, say, their 30s as, it's almost like the baby bear's porridge. It's not so much that I think, gosh, I really shouldn't take this. This must be a big deal for my retirement planning. And it's not so little as they think, oh, I won't bother about it. It's actually a lot of money. It would be very nice to have, but I assume that I've got 30 years to go. Surely, I'm going to do most of my saving later. And that is a big mistake. The money you've saved up until, say, 30, the first 10 years of your saving journey, will be worth almost half of what you eventually have at retirement because of the power of compound interest. And the flip side of that is, if you take that out at, say, 30 or 35, and you don't adjust how much you then save after that, you don't save double or triple, you'll end up in retirement with about half of what you would otherwise have had. And that is not intuitive. It doesn't look like that. And so it's a surprising truth that people should be aware of.
Thank you very much, some very sound advice indeed. Speaking there to Guy Chennels, who's the Chief Commercial Officer at Discovery Corporate and Employee Benefits, discussing the upcoming September release of the new two-part retirement system, which will allow users to access the savings part component of their retirement savings.